a certain level of outcry, but it largely petered out pretty quick with no impact. There was also suggestions that it wasn't actually, it was basically focused around Da Vinci's Last Supper, and essentially an interpretation of that was quite contradictory to the intentions. Basically it was suggested that it actually had nothing to do with the Last Supper. It just happened to be it was a different artwork that had nothing to do with Christianity, that had people sitting at a table, and had probably, if you look at it, more to do with the actual opening ceremony. So it seems unlikely it was actually a dig at Christianity. But I suppose to take a slightly different view, if the Muslim faith had been potentially represented in that fashion, there would have been absolute chaos. And I dare say something would have been lit on fire. Christianity is often seen as a toothless tiger, a bit of a punching bag for the media, fair game, where other religions or other viewpoints are held much more sacred or protected these days. And this is one of the challenges we face as Christians in this day and age. When I was young, pretty much everyone had a denomination. You kind of didn't say, do you believe in God? It was, which church do you go to? Even if they only went 2 days a year, someone would have a denomination. These days, a lot of people have zero denomination. They don't care. God doesn't exist. So the challenge we face, instead of trying to convince them that where they're going may not be giving them the whole picture, is that there's a picture to start with and something to be interested in about this God business. We've got the verse from Matthew down the bottom there. Because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Certainly the love of God, the love of Christ is waxing cold in this generation. The love for one another is as well, but people just don't care about God. They don't see a relevance for God in their life. And traditional Christian standards, morality, people blaspheming, swearing have basically all eroded into primordial soup. No one cares anymore. I sit in business meetings and people are dropping bombs left, right and centre. No one's apologising for language. It's basically all bets are off. Let's say what we think, how we want to. And that's, I suppose, the slope that modern society, especially Western society, is on. Here we go. All right. Now we'll have a bit of a look at some of I was worried Pastor Paul was going to give my talk for me when he started his opening for the meeting earlier. So back in October, there was about 250 hostages taken from a Hamas attack on Israel. There's still over about 100 of those that remain unreleased or unaccounted for. The attack was basically the initiator for the ongoing hostilities, especially the Israeli incursion into Gaza, but that's expanding, I suppose, every day. Israel's essentially declared all the shackles are off, and everything's fair game now. They had been operating in a fairly constrained environment prior to those attacks, and seeing a fair bit of political pressure when they were branching out, but they basically said, we no longer care what the rest of the world thinks, we will now react how we deem fit. And that's, I suppose, it's been going on for a while, for thousands of years, but more recently you've got looking at the Six-Day War in 1967, where Israel preemptively attacked and basically destroyed Egypt and Syria's air forces, and then there was a fairly large land battle that also included large Jordanian forces, and through that Israel actually gained an awful lot of territory. Then there was 1973, which was the Yom Kippur War. Again, Egypt and Syria attacked Israel, and Israel generally is considered to have won that. In both these conflicts, Israel was very much the underdog, but was basically victorious. And there's plenty of presentations and talks that could be given on what would you suggest would be the Lord's intervention in these scenarios and some divine assistance. Jerusalem, interestingly, has been largely left out of this latest conflict. And we see the verse there from Zechariah, behold, I'll make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, and when they shall be in siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem, and in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces. So all people of the earth be gathered together against it. So it's talking about how people are going to come against Israel or Jerusalem, but unsuccessfully. And we can see that through those wars, and as the nations align, currently in current day, you've got, while Jerusalem's not directly impacted, but is getting more involved through, you can see Gaza is the green bit, just on the border of Egypt, kind of down the bottom. We've got Golan Heights up the top in the north, near Lebanon. Those are the two flashpoints at the moment that have seen the most, action, and with Gaza very much being the focus. And then you've got the West Bank, which is actually a massive area, which also impacts on Jerusalem. And that's looking like probably escalating in the future, the conflicts between the Israelis and the non-Israelis around the West Bank look like they may kick off a bit more. So Israel's got one of the most technologically advanced and well-equipped militaries, and it's also supported by one of the most extensive intelligence networks in the world. It's also understood to have about 90 nuclear weapons, although Israel doesn't directly admit or deny having these weapons. Basically, they won't answer the question. So the West, including Israel, have been working very hard to prevent Iran from attaining nuclear capability. Israel holds it, and that's one of the things that's keeping Israel as Israel. So there's a few interesting things with the, nuclear weapons. We've got some diagrams there of, damage and blast radiuses. So strategic nuclear weapons are the big ones, which is on the right-hand side there. So you've got, there's a 30 kiloton and a 45 kiloton ones, and they're, a 2.5 kilometre destruction radius is fairly large. The Russians have a nuclear warhead which is 50 megatons. That's a 35 kilometre destruction zone. So that's basically from here to the city, and then the other side. So basically goodbye Adelaide if one of those got dropped. The megatons that's how many tons of TNT the bomb is equivalent to. So a 50 megaton bomb is 50 million tons of TNT, which is equivalent, which is an awful lot of TNT. If you've seen fireworks, they're little. When you're talking millions of tons of anything that goes bang, it's serious. So they're the strategic nuclear weapons, and they're actually very unlikely to be used these days. They're only really a last resort and will generally result in mutually assured destruction, which is basically the world blowing itself up. But thanks to modern technology, largely submarines and global alliances, it's unlikely these will be used. Putin keeps threatening to shoot a hypersonic nuke at the UK because they're close and the easiest thing for him to hit that's worth hitting. But there's enough UK nuclear-armed submarines floating around that even if the whole UK is glowing in the dark, those submarines can still do immense damage to Russia post that. It doesn't, it's no longer, if your country's gone, your armed forces are gone. With submarines, with nuclear weapons, they can pop up wherever they want and they can do damage to wherever they want across the entire globe. They can stay underwater for weeks and months kind of thing these days and get where they want to be getting to. So it seems very unlikely unless things go really sideways. They're basically a last resort. If your country is about to be completely overrun and taken off the planet, that's where someone might hit the big red button on a strategic nuclear weapon. What's more likely to be used are these tactical nukes, and they used to kind of be called suitcase nukes and that kind of thing. They're much smaller. You're looking at, it might be a 500 metre blast, kind of 1K blast radius. So it's the kind of thing that's to hit a specific target. It's not wiping out a city, it's a targeted attack. And basically, it's just how you get an immense amount of energy out of something that's the size of a missile. So they're more likely to be used. The global response on these would also be quite severe. NATO, America have told Mr. Putin anything that's nuclear-based that gets thrown at the Ukraine would result in some fairly severe repercussions. And that's, again, one of the things stopping it being used. But they are probably the most likely of the nuclear weapons to be utilised in any kind of modern combat as we go. So it's, we don't know whether Putin is actually considering using those. I suppose we hope not, but it's always an option. But yeah, there's, I suppose, just a bit of context there that it's not just bombs dropped on entire cities. So also the bombs used in World War II were between 15 and 25 kiloton. So they're much smaller than the ones on the right, and certainly smaller than megatons worth. And they did immense damage. So no one wins if nuclear weapons get used. So that's a map of the Middle East, which I think we've all seen a fair few times recently. Key countries, so Israel, so the map we had up before is on just the left-hand side, that light blue bit, next to Egypt. So you've got Egypt below Israel, Lebanon is the dark blue just above it, Syria and Jordan next to it. Then you come across to Iraq and Iran, with Iran being the big yellow one on the right-hand side. And they're kind of our key players, and Turkey above that, which is kind of the gateway to Europe and also to Russia. So zoom in a bit, there's two red stars there, which are areas we were talking about. So one of the top Hamas leaders, Ismail Haniyeh, was assassinated allegedly by a bomb that was smuggled into a Tehran guest house where he was staying, and apparently the bomb was smuggled in up to 2 months before he arrived. So after his death, Iran's supreme leader said it was his country's duty to seek revenge for his blood, because he was killed on their soil. He said, "You killed our dear guest in our house, now have paved the way for your harsh punishment." So you can see where Tehran is. It's an awful long way from Israel, and it's the capital city of Iran. So basically, Israel, who haven't officially taken responsibility for it, but when a very specific room in a very specific building blows up magically in Tehran, there's only so many people who you're going to be looking at. And they also haven't denied that they did it. So that was, that's angered Iran, because it's on their soil, it's kind of egg on their face, they haven't protected this person, but it's, from the reports of it, and we'll probably never know the whole truth, but Israel's playing the long game here. If you've smuggled a bomb into a room 2 months ahead of time, you've got some fairly serious plans. This wasn't spur of the moment. This wasn't in retaliation for something that happened last week. This was a long-term kind of goal. We've also had this week that Israeli fighter jets eliminated a Hezbollah military commander. These guys are top of the tree. Like, these are kind of the top 3 in command of these forces. And he was in Beirut, which is the capital of Lebanon. So he was accused of being responsible for the rocket strike on the Golan Heights, which killed 12 Israeli schoolchildren. Basically hit a soccer field and killed 12 Israeli schoolchildren. And that was in retaliation for that. And he was in charge of Hezbollah, and they are very definitely Iran-backed. So Hezbollah and Hamas, hear them a lot. Are they interchangeable? Are they the same thing? They're two different organisations. So Hamas is largely located in the Palestinian territories, Gaza and the West Bank. And my thing's doing fun of its own. You playing Tetris up there? Can we go back on? There we go. All right, so Hamas, largely in these Palestinian territories, but also in some of the neighbouring countries. It's essentially a Sunni Muslim group and is supported by Iran, Turkey, Qatar and Syria. Hezbollah is largely located in Lebanon, which is the dark blue one just above Israel. And they have about 60,000 soldiers, which is more than Australia does. And they also hold, apparently, about 150,000, generally Iranian rockets and missiles. And they're capable of striking deep into the Israeli territory with high precision, and with the intention, obviously, to try to overwhelm Israel's Iron Dome air defence that we've seen, some pretty crazy photos of. So Hezbollah's strategy is basically using this high precision guided munitions, and they're a much more significant threat than the fairly crude, generally missiles and rockets and mortars that Hamas has been firing from Gaza and the West Bank. So, Hezbollah is I suppose, a much more significant threat generally in that context for Israel than Hamas. However, we've got Turkey. Turkey, after the last assassination, and it was on Lebanese ground. Again, the Lebanese capital. Turkey got very upset, and they said we should be. So this was their president said we should be very strong, so that Israel cannot do this stuff to Palestine. Just like we entered Karabakh, just like we entered Libya, we can do the same to them. So this is Turkey, the president of Turkey, directly threatening to enter Israel, as a result of Israel basically firing into other countries, which is a very significant statement. Also, this is out of Twitter, or X for the cool kids. So this was the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This was on their official Twitter page. They put this up. So just as the genocidal Hitler met his end, so will genocidal Netanyahu. Those who tried to eliminate the Palestinians will be held accountable, just like the genocidal Nazis. Humanity will stand with Palestine. So that's a fairly... He's saying what he thinks. He's not pulling any punches. Turkey is not keen on Israel. And it's I suppose, the president's made no secrecy. He does not like Israel. He does not like the Jewish people. Turkey has welcomed Hamas into their country and for over 20 years, and they've given them diplomatic passports to enable them to move more easily. They've given them access to Turkish banks, and they've also provided them with intelligence and basically allowed them to use Turkish soil to plan various things. So Turkey's very much got a foot in the Hamas camp. Turkey's also a NATO member, which means they're legally bound to join in NATO forces in responding to any attack on a NATO country, which very much means they're sitting on the fence for some of this stuff, and their alliances are quite twisted, with the Western world generally being aligned pro-Israel, or certainly Great Britain and America, who are key elements of NATO and decision makers for NATO. So if Turkey was to act against Israel, it would likely do so largely with American military equipment that they've bought or been given. They've got American fighter jets, they've got American missiles, they've got American weapons. So it's an interesting circle, but they've also, on the Ukrainian war side, they've been generally towing the line with NATO. They've restricted Russian access into the Black Sea. They've also kind of been the mediator. There's a few grain deals where the grain's passed out of Ukraine into Turkey to then be on-sold. Turkey's a very interesting player in a lot of geopolitical happenings at the moment, and one to watch because they are somewhat doing what they feel like. They're not too swayed by either side. They're kind of just, running their own course, for better or worse. Just touching on some of the Russian-Ukraine stuff. Won't go into this. In Ezekiel, there's a big prophecy that we've looked at a few times in the last 6 months. And just one little bit that just, I suppose, came out as I was having a look at this. So Ezekiel 38 verse 11, "And thou shalt say, I will go up to the land of the unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates." And there's been various suggestions at times that the up in this is taken as going in a northerly direction, implying North America heading over the Arctic, kind of into North America, over the top of the globe. I don't see the connection here. The word up, the Hebrew word means to go up, to ascend or to climb, and in every single one of its usages in the Bible, it never refers to a direction or a northern orientation. It's like saying I'm going up to the shops kind of thing. There's no I don't say, hey, I'm going, west to Woolworths. You say I'm going up the shops to Woolies. So there's, I think, not seeing that passage specifically relates to a Russian incursion into North America, which is a bit of a side point, but just something that I suppose caught my attention. All right, back to the fruit salad. What does it all mean? There's lots of layers, there's lots of different bits, and it's a bit of a mess when you mix it up. Basically, things are likely to continue to be hectic across the globe, but at the same time, life will go on. We've got the Ukraine war. Now, I don't know how much, when that first started, it was half a news bulletin every night. These days, if it's even in the news, it's on there pretty quickly. We've kind of got used to the fact that there's a war on the other side of the world, and that's bad for them, but it doesn't affect us directly. It's largely a stalemate at the moment. There's a massive death toll. Western impact, as I mentioned, fighter jets, increased artillery provision, lots of equipment being pushed into the Ukraine for their troops to use. Russians' meat wave tactics are having a horrifically heavy toll on people and equipment for Russia. At some point, they're going to run out of stuff. Not sure when, not sure how. But that doesn't look like resolving anytime soon. No one's making big progress, no one's backing down. Ukraine's not just going to say, hey, have 100 kilometres of our country down this eastern edge and we'll call it quits. And Russia doesn't seem like they're going to turn around and walk home anytime soon. In Israel, it's up until this week, there was, it was petering off a bit, and then suddenly 2 key people get assassinated and the whole thing tees off again. And that, I think, is going to be the pattern of the Israeli war, or the conflict in the Middle East, that it's going to be ebbs and flows. There's going to be these significant events, and all you need is one significant event that leads to the wrong people doing the wrong thing, or the wrong people getting excited about it, and we will have full-scale war. At the moment, there's a lot of tit for tat and small things happening here and there. It's not necessarily what you'd call a full-scale conflict. And there's no solutions, there's no end in sight. Israel still can't say, okay, when we've killed every Hamas person in Gaza, what are we going to do? They've announced no plans, there's no plans that are really being discussed. Do they stay there and oversee the rebuilding of the country? Do they get out and let the Palestinians do it? No one can agree. Basically, they're at polar opposites to what should happen, and there's no end in sight. Even if they stop fighting, how do you they basically destroyed every single building in the city. So how do you rebuild it and put the millions of people back into this place and then work out who's going to govern them? There's no plans at all that the world has that make sense. On the other hand, we've got the Olympics. Everyone's happy. It's a global party. It's peace. It's security. It's fun. It's all the countries coming together under this wonderful banner. Australia's third on the medal tally. How's life not awesome? We live a long way from Israel or the Ukraine. We're not about to get invaded. We're there's a saying, fat, dumb and happy, and that sums up a lot of Australians. It's a lucky country. We don't have a whole heap to worry about, which doesn't help people to care about God. People don't need God because things are going well enough. We've got 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. It says, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail a woman with child, and they shall not escape. And Luke 21 says, there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distresses of nations with perplexity, the sea and waves roaring, men's heart failing them for fear. And for those looking after these things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud of power with great glory. And that's what I suppose we can all these events are building to the climax fundamentally, the return of Christ. And, him ruling and reigning and sorting this mess out, because humans certainly won't. So, fundamentally, whatever happens, wherever it happens and however it happens, the best game plan is to be right with God today. We don't know how quickly these things can escalate, or where they're going to escalate, what's going to happen next. I haven't mentioned Taiwan, China. There's all kinds of other things going on across the globe. You know, the best way is to be right with God, filled with the Holy Spirit, and living an acceptable life for Him today and tomorrow. And, you know, if we're doing that, then we can have some confidence in how things are going to play out, and I'll leave it there. And we'll go into a time of prayer. So, praise the Lord.